If you're struggling with depression and anxiety along with erectile dysfunction, this video is for you. I'm going to be talking about some simple ways that you can start changing your mindset to make this problem a lot less painful for yourself. And if you get something out of today's video, please hit the like button. It does help with the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to the channel so you can get weekly updates. And if you're looking for a little bit more help, I do offer one-on-one services, so there's a link on how to get a hold of me down below. Stick around. Look, I know erectile dysfunction is painful. I know you're watching this video because you're struggling. And so what I want to say to you is that I don't have a way that I can take your pain away right now like this. I don't have a pill. As far as I know, one doesn't actually exist. If you knew of a pill like that, you wouldn't be watching me. But what I can do is I can help you change your mindset in a way that will allow things to be less painful. And the reason that this is important is because when you're looking at something and it's really, really painful, it tends to feel really big. You tend to feel small in comparison to the problem, and it feels like there's no way out. And the reason that it took me 7 years to overcome this problem partially is just because I didn't really believe I could overcome it. It felt like this big, humongous deal and this tremendous amount of pain, and it just my mind tortured me over this whole thing. And part of it was just a complete misunderstanding of what was happening. So the first thing I want to say to you is just that this problem is not as big of a deal as you think. And that sounds like a really shitty thing to say to you because you're struggling. And I don't want to imply that because you're struggling, you're weak or something like that. It doesn't mean that. This problem is very painful and it's very challenging to deal with. And whatever you've had to do to get to this point, is just a testament of how strong you are. Because the fact that you're watching this video means you haven't given up all hope, even if you've given up a lot of it. But it's not as big of a deal as you think. So what I mean by that is when you are going into an intimate situation with someone, I'm going to talk primarily about women in this situation because that's where my experience is, but it's universally true. Is that when you're dealing with erectile dysfunction, it feels huge. It feels like no one's ever going to want to love you. Relationships are always going to be, you're either going to have to hide it or you're going to have to be with someone that is willing to deal with this huge flaw in you. A lot of people that are in relationships that have ED often end up in relationships with people where they settle somewhat because they feel like they couldn't actually be with the type of person that they want to be with. And all of this really comes down to a misunderstanding of relationships in general. And so a lot of the guys that I work with, they've heard me say that erectile dysfunction is in its deepest level a misunderstanding of relationships. And I'm going to go into that to a relatively shallow degree today just because of time. But the reason that you feel that way is because when you are bringing this problem into a relationship with someone, whether it's for a night or for long term, you feel like they're going to look down on you. You feel like in some way they're going to pity you or they're going to hurt you in some way. And the more that they know about this problem, the more likely they are going to be to hurt it. So the most common thing that men do in this situation is that they try to hide it. They take pills. Everybody wants to take Cialis so they don't have to look at why this is happening. They have excuses. If they go out and have a one-night stand, I just had too much to drink or something like that. It's reasonable that you would do that. I get it. I've done it myself. But what you're really doing is you're hiding. And you're hiding because you think that if you tell the person the truth, that they're going to hurt you. They're going to reject you in some way, that they couldn't possibly love you if they know the truth about you. And this is a fundamental misperception that will keep you stuck. The longer you believe this, the longer you will stay stuck. And the reason for that is because we are just wired for empathy. If you look at the TV and you look at the news or anything, you scroll through your feeds, you're going to find a lot of things that point the opposite direction of this. You're going to see a lot of fear. You're going to see the worst of humans. But the truth is, in one-on-one situations, especially with people who are um, generally looking for a real relationship, we tend to want to open ourselves up. We all have that fear of something. If we let someone else know, they're going to judge us for it and they're not going to love us, and we all tend to hide it. And so the first thing is that by opening yourself up in a way where you just reveal the pain behind this, that alone, it allows a type of intimacy that isn't very common in today's society, because we're all so scared, because we're all so closed off and we don't want to really show ourselves to people. I hear the saying, "Oh, I don't want her to have to deal with my problems," and it makes me laugh a little bit when I hear that, because if you're entering into a relationship with someone, whether it's just sexual or it's a long-term intimate relationship, you're bringing your problems and they're bringing their problems, and that's just how relationships work. This is a new modern American idea where I try to shelter you from my problems and you try to shelter me from your problems, and we all try to pretend like everything's fine. And this is one of the reasons that you see divorce rates spike through the roof over the last 100 years. There's a lot of other reasons, but humans now, we try to have a relationship without any of the consequences. And so part of being in a relationship with someone is that they see you. They see the great parts of you and they see the shitty parts of you. And the thing about it is that we assume that when we open that shitty part of ourselves up, and I'm calling, having ED a shitty part of ourselves, but the truth is that the way most women experience that is it's not a big deal to them. Women are oftentimes very confused about why this is such a big deal to men, and they have a hard time understanding how painful the situation really is for guys with ED, because to them, it's not a big deal. Women and men fundamentally value different things when it comes to relationships as a baseline. And this isn't saying that men and women are incapable of valuing the same things. It's just that generally men, especially men who have grown up in Western cultures, and especially men who have been addicted to porn or had a history with porn, they tend to put a very high emphasis on the value of sex. So we, as a culture, learned about sex from porn. Our culture in America, at least, and in a lot of Western countries, we don't have real sex education. We don't really have anybody to talk to about sex. It's kind of a taboo subject. So men watch porn without realizing that you're learning about relationships through this. And in that process, what happens is that you see a guy with a dick that is just constantly hard for 20 minutes, and they change positions, everything goes perfectly, the girl is coming constantly the whole time, and subconsciously you think that in order to make a woman happy, you have to do that. And that is complete bullshit. That's not what sex is really like. That's not what relationships are really like. And so women have a much more grounded sense generally of what's important in relationships. And what women tend to value in relationships are things like connection. Like, how does this person make me feel? Do they want to meet my needs? Do they make me laugh? Do they have good character? These things tend to be things that women just naturally care about more than men. Men, we tend to look more at, does she look like a porn star? How close to my ideal of attraction does she look? And then on top of that, once we get them, it's a lot like how, can I make her come enough times to keep her happy? And if that doesn't happen, then the relationship will probably fall apart. So as I work with men and I help them open up around this type of stuff, oftentimes guys are really shocked by the reactions that they get from women when they start talking about it. Because to women, the idea of I'm nervous, and so sometimes because I'm nervous, it's hard for me to get an erection. To them, it's like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, well, we'll just help you relax. But to the guy, that's a really terrifying experience because we have hid that pain for so long and we're so ashamed of it. And there's just so much, there's so much built up in our mind about how this person would reject us if we open them up to it. And so we build this humongous imaginary wall, and it's not real. And so the thing that you can do that immediately helps with this is to just start taking the problem less seriously. One of the things that I did is I named my erectile dysfunction. I named it Ed. And so I started noticing that when things in my mind would talk about, all the different things about, am I going to lose my erection, or, is anyone ever going to love me? Maybe I should be celibate. Maybe I should, all these different things. I just realized, oh, that's Ed talking. It's not a big deal. And I started to get to the point where I could laugh at Ed. When I could laugh at Ed telling me that no one would ever love me, I can tell you that those thought patterns in my mind became way less important. So naming it, whether or not that helps you, I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But the things that really makes a change for you is to find a way to not let this problem be so big. Because the truth is that it's not. It feels big because it's really painful. It cuts down to the core of who you are. And so when something is that personal, it tends to feel like it's a really big deal. But the steps that actually are required to take to overcome ED for most guys are very small. Most of the time, get off porn. That's a great first step for 30 to 50% of guys. That's going to solve the problem on its own. The next thing, just be vulnerable enough to say, I have this problem. It's hard for me to have an erection because I have anxiety. If you talk to your partner about that, they're going to want to comfort you. They're wired to comfort you. We have these things called mirror neurons, which means that if something bad happens to someone else, you immediately you can tell what that feels like. And you don't want to feel that, so you want to comfort them. We're wired to comfort each other. It's basic human physiology. And so when you open up to someone about this problem, what they want to do is they want to help you with it. Are there exceptions to this? Absolutely. There are some terrible people out there. You need to be careful about who you open up to about it. There are people that you can open up to this problem about and they'll laugh at you or they will make fun of you. But the truth is that the percentage of people who are going to be okay with it is much higher than you think. And the very first time that I opened up to a woman about this, she was totally supportive. The second time I opened up to her about this problem, totally supportive. The third time, totally supportive. I tend to choose people in my life that are very supportive of me. That's just one of the things that I've always been interested in, is somebody who was going to be emotionally supportive of me. But overall, this is something that isn't an unusual thing. Most people, if you're honest about something that's really painful, like if I was like, hey, I have cancer, you're not going to probably go, ha ha, and make fun of me. If I came out and said that to you and you were my friend, your first instinct, without even having to figure out what to do, is to feel bad and want to help me or want to comfort me, because we care about each other as humans. And so if you can open yourself up and allow yourself to be comforted, the process of being comforted will allow you to deal with this. And it takes time to be able to do that. A lot of times you can't go from being really scared about talking about this to opening up completely. But what you can do is you can lighten your mind around it. You can just start to understand that a lot of the pain you're going through has nothing to do with the erectile dysfunction. It goes into how you think about the erectile dysfunction. And that your mind says shit like, this problem's never going to go away. And you believe it. But your mind can lie to you. You can eat a full, large pizza and then see a piece of cake sitting there, even though your stomach feels terrible, and your mind can go, I want to eat that cake. And then you'll eat the cake and you'll feel terrible. Your mind can lie to you. And so learning how to notice the patterns that your mind says over and over and over again, you'll start to notice that those patterns are simply not true. And even if they are true, they're not helpful. Thinking the same things over and over again, like I'm going to lose my erection while you're having sex, whether or not that's true, it's not helpful. So starting to notice that your mind has a lot of control over how your life is experienced. If I could snap my fingers and take all of those shitty thoughts that your mind has about sex and losing your erections and not being loved and all those types of things, your erections would come back immediately. And even if they didn't, you would be way happier. Because the thing that's actually making you unhappy is the thoughts, the way that you feel about those thoughts. And so dealing with your mind is a very, very important part of overcoming ED. You have to start to lighten it. It's not as big of a deal as you think. ED is a painful problem, but it's not as big of a deal as you think. And what definitely isn't a big deal is the way you think about it. The way that you are thinking about ED is never going to solve your ED. because what you're doing with those mindset is just you're torturing yourself emotionally. So you have to find ways to lighten it. So a good trick to help lighten this is to take something that's really easy and pleasurable for you to think about. And then anytime you notice yourself thinking about anything related to your ED, bring your attention to that picture or image or whatever. So good things to use would be a friend of yours that makes you laugh. Or for me, I used to have a pet raccoon, and he would sit and his back feet would be up like that. And I just found it was adorable. I would look at his back feet like that and I would always smile. So I would just think about my raccoon sitting on his butt with his feet up. Made me smile. And it was an easy thing for me to think about. So I would bring my mind from, oh no, I'm going to lose my erection the next time I have sex, or no one's ever going to love me, whatever. And I'd bring my mind back and just think about the raccoon. And you have to do it over and over and over again. But what you do is it starts to weaken those patterns in your mind. And it just allows things to be lighter. Find ways to laugh. If you can find ways to laugh about your ED will go away very quickly. And even if it doesn't, your life will improve. You will see depression go away. You'll see anxiety go away. It's about dealing with your mind. This problem is a mental problem. And even if you have a physical problem, if you've been in a car accident or something and it clipped a nerve or destroyed some of the arteries that feed your penis, whatever physical thing that may exist, if you deal with the mental issues, even if it doesn't fix the physical problem, your quality of life will be so much better. So much better. I can't even explain how much better. And it's just because this problem is so painful because of how we torture ourselves over it. Okay? So that's how we're going to deal with it this week, and we'll keep going. Next week, we'll have more help on this. And if this has been helpful for you and you're looking for more help, I did start a subreddit where you can ask questions. I respond. It's completely free. It's a way for you to do things anonymously. And if you're looking for a little bit more help, there's a link down below on how to get a hold of me. I do work with men one-on-one. It's a really rewarding experience watching guys overcome this. And it's a thing that can be done. You can overcome this. You don't have to be stuck. Most guys, their problems aren't severe enough that they need to work with me regularly. So I do have one-time strategy sessions as well. So go take a look at my website, and if that's helpful, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. All right, I'll see you next week.